the same user base on both, and I assume they want to have some value on both, right? They want all abandoned Ethereum side to go to the Pulse side. At least I won't do it. The second thing is, like I explained to you before, it's a self-balancing system. If people that are staked now on the Ethereum side, when their stakes end, just move all their value to the Pulse side, then the people that are still staked on the Ethereum side will earn more yield, because the yield is a factor of how many people are staked. And if the number of people staked goes down, the yield that each one receives goes up. Okay. You can also think about it from the point of view of newer onboards, right? Because the goal is to have a new chain to get adoption and for the entire ecosystem to grow in terms of adoption, right? And if you are a new person and you have the choice to buy X on Ethereum or X on the Pulse chain, how will you choose which you're going to buy, right? That's the big question. And one way to look at it would be, okay, what's the price of X in both? What are the fees of X of the chain of both chains? And if I add the two together, in which of them I pay less for my X? Right? That's one way to look at it, right? If on the Ethereum side, the price you pay for the X plus the fees you need to pay to get it or to swap it on the Ethereum, which should be higher than on the Pulse chain, are worth the price difference, maybe I buy it on the Ethereum side and not on the Pulse side, right? It will also depend on the amounts. If you're buying smaller amounts, probably the fees will bite more into your principal than on the Pulse chain, right? So it will depend on who is buying it, how much are you buying it for, and the chain you're on, right? But on top of this, you have to think about how much yield your X will have if you stake it on both chains. Because if you're buying it to stake, you have to take that into account. And then you have to consider the T-share rate on both sides, which most likely will be different on both, and the overall yield you'll get for each T-share that you'll have in the system, or for each share of the pool you'll have on each side. And so, at one point in time, it might be better for you to buy the X on the Pulse chain to stake it, but maybe a month later, it's actually better for you to buy it on the Ethereum side and stake it. So it will be, again, a self-balancing act between how many people stake on each side, the fee difference on each side, and the amount you're going to invest, and for how long.
Yeah, right, Max. It makes sense. Thanks. I mean, yeah. Well, we won't know till it starts. Yeah. Right now, as far as I see, it just makes sense to just buy HEX because you're going to get a version also on the Pulse chain. So right now, just buy HEX, and then you'll decide, as you say, considering all the fees and everything, what to do next.
Yeah, if ever is a good time to buy is after a 93-95% drop, right? So yeah,
Right now,
at least
something like
that's what I'm doing.
Are we?
What? Sorry.
We are right now something like a 93 or 95% drop from
Exactly.
all-time high.
Exactly. That's why I said what I said, right? Because I believe it's a good time to buy, and that's why I'm buying.
The thing is a good idea, but this is just a question was bothering me. It's like, yeah, Hex.2, all right, it's coming the second version. Oh, how is it going to be? Or maybe it's going to be even more popular. Or is it? What happens then to the Hex on Ethereum? And it's like,
Yeah,
is it
it's a good
going to
question.
also do 10,000? Thanks a lot for
Yeah,
answer. Yeah. Well,
no problem.
so I had a question a little bit about the PulseX. What's the best version to actually? What would you do with it? You got a PulseX, and then it's like it comes. It's like you can on one side stating this is quite easy, you know. But I've heard a couple of times those liquid. If you want to be liquidity provider, it's a little bit more complicated. Is there any risk that you can actually lose
So
it?
you're talking about using the PulseX exchange, or are you talking about the PulseX token, the PLSX token?
X token, yeah, and then you just want to do something with it, or you can just leave it. But if you can leave it, you can stake it, yeah. Or
So
that's right. So
the the PLSX token, in my opinion, you can think about it in different ways. The way I look at it is as having ownership of the exchange, right? It's like by owning PulseX, I own a share of the PulseX company. Let's imagine, okay? And why is that? Because the PulseX exchange overall is a yield generating service, right? You go to there, you do your swap, and you have to pay a fee to swap it, right? And we know that a portion of that fee will go to the buyback and burn mechanism, right? So that being said, uh, what does it mean? This means that the more volume the exchange has, the more quote unquote revenue the exchange generates, more value will be given to the shareholders, which are the owners of PLSX, because the buyback and burn mechanism buys the tokens from the market, basically pushing the price up, and then burns them. So it's the same as a normal company using a portion of their revenue to buy back their stock and then destroying those stocks, so removing the number of stocks, and basically all the owners of the stock uh, have a more valuable stock in their possession, right?
yeah, right. I get it. Yeah.
So for me, owning PulseX is the same as owning stock from a company that's always generating revenue and giving a portion of that revenue to the owners, basically the owners of the shares, right? Now, how to best use this asset other than having it on the wallet itself? You can either, like you said, use the PulseX single-sided staking pools, which are zero risk, right? So
No, this. I mean,
uh,
this is exactly what I wanted to hear. Is there any risk if I stake it? Any risk? There's never, and there's
no,
no breach over there.
if you use the single-sided staking for the third-party tokens, the only risk you have is contract risk. But contract risk is you can see the contract, read the contract, and there's no risk of anything else, right? It's basically risk-free, right?
This you get this incentive
Uh,
this token, and that's it. And you can any moment just stop doing it, and yeah, it's like
exactly,
there's no risk.
Eh, exactly. You add however many tokens to the existing pools, and you remove them whenever you want. Of course, the more tokens you put in the pools and the longer you leave it there, the more value you'll accrue, as it's natural. Um, but there's no risk, right? If you want to use your PulseX to provide liquidity, then there are risks, right? Of course, you earn a portion of the fees that the users pay to use your liquidity, but you can have what's called permanent loss, which can become permanent loss when you remove your liquidity. Have you ever heard about it? Do you know what it is?
I think I heard about this. Is this a difference in prices? I'm not losing my tokens. It's just I'm
No,
losing the.
let me just give you an example. So imagine you put 1,000 PLSX and 1,000 Pulse PLS. Okay, so basically 1 to 1. You have 1,000 of PLSX and 1,000 PLS, right? They are traded 1 to 1.
This is what I provide. This is my.
This is what you provide, okay? But then the users go to your pool and trade between two tokens. So they basically, if they want PLSX, they buy your PLSX and give you PLS. So as more people do this on the pool, you'll have a small amount of PLSX, but a big amount of PLS, right? Instead of having 1,000 of one and 1,000 of the other, you can reach a point where there is 500 of one and 2,000 of the other, right?
So it's like, okay.
500 PLSX and 2,000 PLS, right?
Yeah.
And if you remove liquidity at that point, instead of having 1,000 of each, you have 500 of one and 2,000 of the other. And even though you overall have more tokens, the tokens you have more of are less valuable than if you just had hold on to the initial amount. That's what impermanent loss is. So let's imagine.
I think I get it.
Yeah. So the 500 PLSX tokens you lost, quote unquote, would be worth more than the 1,500 PLS tokens you got. That's basically what impermanent loss is. Not that you actually lose, but you lost compared to if you had just hold the tokens yourself. You understand what I'm saying?
We also have to calculate how much. Yeah, I get it. It's like we see right now on the testnet that what is it, like Pulse X to Pulse chain is like 3 to 1, and at the beginning was like 2 to 1. It's changed. Yeah? So that's what you're talking about. So if I lose, this.
Yeah, and for people to obviously take this risk, there needs to be a reward, right? And the reward is the fees that the users pay to do the transactions, the swap, and in some pools, the incentive token. So those are the incentives for people to add their liquidity and have that risk, right? And that's why you can earn money by doing so, earn fees, but you can also overall lose in terms of value if you have a lot of impermanent loss when you remove your liquidity. So it really depends on what you're trying to do.
You can actually, I think you can actually calculate all of it. Is it possible if you liquidity provider just to stop it at once? I mean, or it's just like,
yeah, you can stop it whenever you want.
So if you just calculate this and you're like hot on the topic and you check and is everything all right, and if it makes sense, then you carry on. If you see it's going wrong direction, you can stop it.
Yeah, you can remove liquidity whenever you want and add it whenever you want. There's no sort of time limit, right? Or time restriction.
Besides this, there's no risk like any other risk than this.
Not really. Yeah. So the risk in providing liquidity is basically when you remove your liquidity, the overall tokens or the overall value that you removed is lower than what you would have had if you just had the original tokens yourself. If you had hold on to the original tokens yourself.
Right. Great explanation. So, and maybe I should just ask, how long will we have it? How much in advance do you think we'll get information from Richard about the snapshot. This is just in case you want to buy a HEX or something like that.
So the snapshot that people are talking about is actually the fork. When the fork happens, the copy happens, the snapshot happens. So it won't be in two different time frames. When the fork happens, the snapshot is taken.
You mean exactly when this chain starts?
Exactly. When the fork happens, when the Pulsechain starts, it starts exactly with the same system state as Ethereum, and from that point on, it will be different. So if you hold X before the fork, you'll get the copy. If you hold any ERC20 token before that fork happens, you'll get the copy. It's not like the snapshot will be in a month and then the fork can happen in 2 or 3 or 4, right? When the fork happens, the snapshot is also happening at the same time, the copy. Okay, the snapshots, people, it's a term used just for basically, like the name implies, taking a picture of the Ethereum state or the blockchain state for a specific purpose down the line. What a fork is a copy of the chain, or a fork on the chain from that point onward. So in a specific block, instead of having only one chain, you have now two chains, right? That's what a fork is, a split in the chain. And when that fork happens, in the case of Pulsechain, you will also copy all the states of the Ethereum chain to the Pulse chain. So instead of having just one chain, which is Ethereum, at a certain point in time, you'll start having two, Ethereum and Pulse chain with its own specific rules and with the same state as Ethereum at the beginning. And then as people do different things on the Pulse chain compared to the compared to the Ethereum side, the state will change over time, right?
Right. And do you think we'll be informed like 1, 2 days, 3 days before, or maybe even?
Can you speak? I'm losing what you're saying. Can you speak closer to the mic?
I said, hello. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me now?
And do you think we'll be informed like 1, 2, 3 days before, or maybe just after the start? If it's already started, we'll be informed that let's say the fork already been.
So Richard said multiple times that he would give a pre-warning before the fork actually happens.
Okay. So there will be like a 1, 2 days.
Let me finish. So he wouldn't give an exact block height, so an exact date, but he will probably warn people that, okay, starting today, it can happen at any time, or it can happen in the next week, the next 2 or 3 days, whatever. He told us that he would give us a pre-warning. But recently, due to all the bitching about the delays, Richard made a tweet saying, okay, I won't give any more updates. What I assume that means is that he won't be predicting a launch until he knows for sure that will happen. But some people say that he's not going to warn people anymore, which I don't really agree. I still believe that he will give a pre-warning before the fork actually happens. But just in case, it's better to have your ducks in a row before, just in case he doesn't say anything. That would be my 2 cents. But previously, he always said he will give a pre-warning, and I still believe he will give a pre-warning before the actual fork.
Great. That's right. That might happen. And as far as I remember, when it starts, then it's a 2 days period, which you can actually only swap, yeah, between Pulsechain and PulseX. Am I remembering good?
Basically, there will be a time frame where no bridges are connected to the Pulse chain, and during that time frame, there is no dollar value associated to any tokens. So, in theory, you could trade it back and forth without incurring some sort of tax event. That's basically the main benefit, and
But,
you'll be just
sorry, but only between Pulse and PulseX, right?
no, only between tokens in the Pulse chain. So when
Between
the
all
fork
of them.
happens, when the fork happens, all the copies from all the tokens from Ethereum will be copied to the Pulse chain. So if you have one of those copies, you can swap them around between Pulse, PulseX, X, whatever you want, without having a dollar value. You'll just have a ratio between the tokens.
Interesting, because how will be the value calculated? Because we could actually assume that for $1 you had like 10,000 for PulseX or the Pulse chain.
It doesn't matter. If you go to Uniswap right now, when you see both, when you want to buy, for instance, Ethereum versus when you want to buy X with Ethereum, you put one Ethereum, it will give you the amount, the number of X's it will buy. It doesn't matter the dollar value that each has. One token of each will represent X amount of tokens of the other. It's a ratio between the two tokens. No dollar value is needed for you to swap between them.
Interesting.
The dollar is just given because people know that Ethereum is worth a certain amount. And so if you one Ethereum buys you 10x, then X is 1/10 of the value of Ethereum, right? But it doesn't really matter for the trading itself how much Ethereum is worth. It just matters how many X you can get for one Ethereum. That's what really matters. And
Like
that
the
is
thing is,
it's set by the pools, the ratio between the pools.
so I just thought, so if you find somewhere a token which is like 5 0 after the one, and you buy like plenty of them of this
It
token.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You cannot gamify. It doesn't matter if you have 0.000. If one token is worth $0.00001, and then you buy a bunch, what matters is the ratio between that token and Ethereum or the other tokens.
Okay, Elmaya, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm sorry.
Elmira.
Ermaya, thanks a lot. You helped me a lot. That was very nice that you answered straight away. I wasn't sure if there's anyone there.
No, no problem. Usually there's someone here that can help. And if not, you can just come back later and someone will for sure. That's what we are here for.
I know, I've been actually here a couple of times. It's just, I know now if we're all waiting for the start, which might take a little bit. We don't know if it's just waiting for the bottom or he's just really trying to fix the problem. It just doesn't matter.
Richard said he was not waiting for the bottom. He said it clearly yesterday in what do you call it? A Twitter call? No, what's it called? Twitter Spaces. In the Twitter Spaces, he clearly said he was not timing the market. They were sorting out issues, and when it's ready, it will be launched.
Excellent, exciting times, guys.
Yep.
Maya, it's nice to hear some chat in the room. I've been a bit busy at work, so I haven't been in much. But any time I've came in, it's been really quiet. So it's just nice to see a little bit of activity going on.
Yeah, I guess most people have already had their answers, their questions answered, uh, and so I assume that's why it's calmer and people are just waiting and waiting. But when the launch is near, I'll probably the number of people in the chat will revert back to quote unquote normal levels.
Certainly.
Asking when Moon and when Lambo.
Yeah, but
Maya, we had sorry, by the way.
No, go ahead.
We had a really interesting discussion the other day about providing liquidity during a certain range in Uniswap to earn a little bit of fees. Would it be okay if I drop you a DM regarding that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you
Yes,
very
and
much.
I'm actually using Uniswap V3 myself to test out providing liquidity in the range, and so far the
Yeah,
results are very good.
well, it was you that mentioned it, and it was another good discussion a couple of days ago. There's a few interested people, but I've just been that busy. I haven't had time to jump back in. So no, I'll just send you a quick message. Thank you.
No problem, no problem. Go ahead. I'm working right now at the same time, but I'll get to it as soon as I can.
Hey, Elmire, it's Chastown. Hey, I spoke to you last week briefly, and I was going to send you that token that was dropped into my wallet, and I was going to send it to you. I didn't get a chance because you'd actually got offline, and now I'm finally back. So I'm about to shoot you a DM with this token to see if it's garbage. I know that I'm not going to open it, but I was just going to see if you knew anything about it. Do you remember that conversation?
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Elmire. So here's a question for you. I guess it's a little bit more security related now that you've answered that. Since you don't want to touch anything like that, is there any way to kind of remove it so like 6 months, 8 months down the line, or maybe even 2 to 3 years, I do not inadvertently touch that?
You just leave it alone. You should not remove it, send it anywhere, should not touch it.
Got it.
If you somehow added it to MetaMask, just remove it, and that's the only thing you can do.
Well, here's what's odd. It went straight to my wallet and didn't even touch my MetaMask. So somehow it um,
Oh,
bypassed it. Is there?
wait. Remember that all the wallets are just keychains. Anybody can send tokens to you to your address. You don't need permission to receive tokens. You just need permission to send.
Got it.
And you need to get some phones, some headsets.
Oh, is my mic wrecked?
No, but there's a lot of feedback when you're not muted.
Will the change to Go affect the speed of the transaction?
Um, when you say speed of transaction, not really. It will most likely influence the throughput, which means the number of transactions that people can do, not the speed of one single transaction.
Does that mean the blocks will come out faster than 3 seconds?
The blocks are planned to take 3 seconds. What I believe might happen is each block will be able to have more transactions, but it could be the case. Yes, the blocks, the number of blocks can also increase. But again, I'm not in the know about what exact changes they are making, and Richard hasn't come forward saying it, other than they they are changing a portion of the validator rotation code to Go. So I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks.
In theory, it will make the chain have more throughput, but if that means faster blocks or more transactions per block, I'm not sure.
Okay.
So Robert, Gamma is just going to jump in the chat and confirm the thing about we were talking about, if the change adds more speed or just throughput. From what he said in the chat, just more throughput because you have more space in each block for more transactions. But the man
Oh,
himself can explain. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Gamma.
I'm in the chat now. The question is, how do the current changes of the developers moving some of the code from inside the EVM in system contracts outside EVM to the client and Go, how does that affect transaction speed? Is that like generally what we're talking about here?
Yeah. Was what Robert asked,
I mean,
and I wasn't sure. I thought it was basically what you said, but I'm not.
yeah,
I wasn't sure. So
yeah, it's pretty straightforward, really. Nothing super complicated. If the validator and the slashing and validators, if that information doesn't have to be stored inside the EVM, meaning like on the blockchain, then that information, transactions, whatever, like just we'll call it information, right? Because information is contained in blocks. So if that information isn't contained in the blockchain, meaning inside the EVM, then that information would take up block space. Like how much block space? I don't know. I don't know the number. I can't say. But it's significant enough that Richard and the devs thought it would be a good idea to move it outside of the EVM, to put it inside the client, and so allow for that information to be stored in RAM and like however they're moving that, right? I mean, I can't get into technicals so much because I haven't seen the code. It's all secret, right? But but the point is, if that information that would be like V2B would be inside of the block space, if we free that up, then more transactions could be like user transactions could be put there in its place, which would theoretically like slightly increase transaction speeds because, right, say you can put like 100 more transactions per block in or 20. I'm just arbitrary numbers. You know what I mean?
yeah, it depends on the space those adders basically would take in the block. Basically.
Yeah, and then this goes into I mean, I have to kind of guess a little bit, but like I'll say this much. One thing that they're trying to do, and one of the things that Richard brought up in his talk with the Twitter Spaces, is like an attack vector where somebody could use the validators and slashing in some way to fill up block space, I guess, or somehow halt the chain. And
Basically, a
by moving,
DDoS attack, right?
yeah. So if that logic is put outside of the EVM, then if somebody were to attack the chain, they're not attacking the actual blockchain, like with blocks being produced. They're putting load on the servers, and you know what you can easily do? Make larger servers. You can add RAM. You can add CPUs. You can deal with those types of things in ways that are very similar to like websites, right? What do websites do if they get an attack that's like overloading their system? Well, they just add hardware or they do code tweaks. They can route it. They can do DDoS protection. They can do all this, right? But it's a lot harder if that the business logic was inside the blockchain because, say, theoretically, somebody attacked the consensus, like the validators, like slashing or some way. I'm just like making up some stuff, like the slashing in some way. Well, maybe they do that in such a way that it fills up block space, and then now like no user transactions could go into the block, and like so you've effectively fucked the chain. Well, that's kind of like my best guess on like kind of what they're doing. Like, don't hold me to that, but it's like the best guess I have to like kind of what they're trying to alleviate with all these changes they're doing. You know, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, makes sense, especially because probably that sort of information you don't really pay fees for it. You can just fill up all the blocks with those sort of request, I guess.
Oh,
And
that's a good point, actually, because 4 months ago they made it so system contract transactions are feeless, 0 fee.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to pay fees on that. Like the system itself doesn't want to pay fees. Well,
Exactly.
well, now you've got attack vector, right? Now it's a feeless thing.
Yeah, they could just fill up the block, because if they want to DDoS the chain itself by throwing in a bunch of transactions, at least they need to pay for them, right? On the other hand, if it's feeless transactions, then you have a problem.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I think they're doing, which makes sense. I'm not happy about it, I'm kind of pissed that it's taken so long, like everybody is. But like, I technically understand why. And then so I'm like, breathing, like, breathe. It'll be fine. At least we won't like have a Solana situation every fucking 5 minutes, right? And that's one of the things that they're trying to alleviate, because they don't want us to have a Solana situation like a few days after we launch, which could have been prevented if we just delayed the launch. And like imagine how shitty it would be if like we literally launched and then the next day we had a Solana situation, and then the devs were like, we knew that was going to happen. Why didn't you fix it? Oh, we wanted to launch instead, and the community said we needed to launch, and we just launched. Well, Richard basically is like the leader, and he's like in charge, and he said, well, we know how to fix this problem. We'll do the work, and then we'll launch, and then we'll have like a very low percentage chance of having a Solana situation, when right now, I guess with the available information that Richard's put out, it'd be highly likely that somebody who knows, Ethereum well could probably orchestrate some attack and then halt the chain, which would be kind of annoying. And then our devs would have to like figure out how to fix it on the fly instead of just doing the work now. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm basically explaining like Solana's development right now. They go down for like today, and then they jump through their ass and trying to find a fix, and then next week they go down again and they have to jump through their ass and fix it. And like, okay, well, we don't want to be like if Solana, version 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, yeah, I wasn't even planning on coming into voice. It's been so boring. Any other technical questions? I love it. Give me something to talk about.
Yeah, we had some before, just generally about X and how the copy would work and what the fork actually is versus snapshot, etc. But I think that was sorted out, and the person asking already left. So.
I got one.
But if anyone has,
I'm still here.
I'm here now. Hang out. I'm at my house.
I wanted to thank you for that explanation. That was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Robert.
Cypher had a question. Go ahead. I think it was Cypher.
So, what's the speed going to be like? Is this affecting any speed? What they're doing?
Yeah, we were just kind of talking about that. So, say theoretical speed, say 3-second blocks. There's so much block space, right? Like each block can only be so big, and it's 40 million gas limit. That's how you define how big how many transactions can go in a block is 40 million gas limit.
It's already known the amount. It's 40 million.
Yeah, it's been 40 million testnet.
Okay. I had no idea. I haven't checked.
No, it's been 40 million since I've been running testnets. They could move it to 80 million, but like that would be bigger blocks, and then you know what I mean, and you'd have to
more space.
You'd have to see how many. Yeah. I mean, why would you make the validators and all the full nodes like run heavier hardware to maintain like 80 million gas limit if whatever. But starts at 40 million. They can increase it. Binance is like 80 million or something. And that 80 million or that 40 million gas limit defines how many transactions can go in each block, because it's like the GUI. So it's 40 million is basically the like each contract, each function within a contract has a certain amount of GUI gas that has to be used. So it's calculated like a Pulse or an Ethereum transaction is 21,000 GUI basically is like the gas. Like that's how much it costs in gas, and then you multiply that by how costly is the gas, right? One GUI right now, like Ethereum was the lowest I used, like 20 GUI, and that's super cheap. Pulsechain is like 2 usually. It can be like 1, and then it can be slightly more than 1 is the bare minimum, and then right now it's usually 2 or 3 beats, which is our version of GUI. And that's just a competing, right? That's just the GUI price is just competing for the amount of block space. So you're competing for block space. So you can put a bunch of like say Pulse transactions into a Pulse block at 21,000 gas limit, and you can just add those in. And I could even do the math real quick. It'd be like super easy. So it's like basically effectively 40 million divided by 21,000. So you could put like 1,900 single like Pulse transactions like in a block. But those are just the simplest transaction that's imaginable, super cheap, right? But no, who does that? Like nobody. Like the block would be huge, you know. So of course you're not going to put 1,900 transactions in a block, because most of the network isn't sending Pulse or sending Ethereum. It's doing exchanges on PulseX. It's doing doing swaps on PulseX. It's doing validator, like adding delegate. It's removing delegate. It's like, you know what I mean, using third-party projects and like yield farming and like doing all that stuff. And all that takes gas. And so there's a fee, a gas limit for each of one of those like transactions. And so if you add all those individual transactions together, the limit is 40 million for a block. And so that's that's exactly what the validators do. They literally like look at all the transactions that are available that they know about on the network, and then they put together a block that's 40 million. And what they do is they prioritize the ones that have the higher fee first, and then the ones that have like no like 1 or 2 GUI, then they should prioritize those less. But each block would have a maximum of 40 million gas limit. And then now you're competing for block space. Now, if there's only 100 blocks, then all those 100 will go in. There's no need to compete for block space, because literally all 100 transactions that are currently available can like go into a block like no problem. They just takes them, packages them into a block. Their rotation comes around, and then they just go, oh, this is what's available. Boom, package them up, and now they publish the block, and now that goes to the next block and then on the blockchain. And like they just continually do that. That's what a validator does, right? And that's what an Ethereum miner does. That's what a Bitcoin miner does. Like effectively the exact same concept that I just talked about is like how it works in all these blockchains. The only thing the difference is like how do you select the validator to make the block? Like how do you select the machine that's going to package the transactions in a block? How is that chosen? Is the difference.
Do you know if they tinkered with the amount of gas that specific things take on the chain?
Hot mic. Jane. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, really, what you're talking about is like stress testing the network.
No. I
like
mean, if they change the costs. For instance, we know that the reading on the Ethereum
the opcodes
was
yes, that those are called opcodes. and the fee, the gas limit fee for each of those opcodes, I actually have not looked to see if they're the same, but I would imagine they're probably the same as like what's running on Ethereum right now.
Because if we think about what Rich has said, when they changed like the one for the less S load read for, to read basically the database, when they increased it to 12x, that was too much. So maybe we could think about lowering some of those numbers.
They could, but here's the thing: changing those numbers isn't something that needs to happen for mainnet. Like literally, like
Oh
it
yeah,
could
yeah.
be like that's a configuration they probably shouldn't or wouldn't want to touch, because we're changing so much other stuff already. Then those were fine already. But say after we launch, we could literally go through all the opcodes and change those numbers, and then have a hard fork update, right, of the network, and say, well, now the new opcode cost for all these functions are now like this, and that's us doing our own development, like separate from Ethereum, and now we branched off from Ethereum, and now we're doing our own thing after we forked.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. It would require a hard fork, but it wouldn't be a hard fork like, say, theoretically, this development that they're doing, like we just talked about. Say the devs, Richard, the devs decided they weren't going to do that. They were going to keep the validator and the slashing code inside the EVM. They weren't going to do that work. They're going to do it after. Well, you literally would need to bring the network down, and then all the validators at least would have to like update and then come back up again. But that's a hard fork. Now, that would be like literally like changing stuff inside of the database and changing the client, and that would be harder, much harder to do. But if you just did a change the opcodes, then you could set it so that at some future block, the opcodes changed. Everybody updates their clients, all the validators, all the full nodes. Everybody updates their client, and then says a week from now, 2 weeks from now, at this particular block, this will be effective. And then now we're using new opcodes. That's effectively how Ethereum does most of their hard forks, right? Which is like everybody just has enough time to update, and then you get 90, 95%, 99% of the nodes are on the new updated clients, and then at some future block height, then it becomes active and everything's fine. So that's usually how that goes.
Sounds good. Thanks for that.
So the difference between that and what I said before is like you don't need to bring the network down to change, right?
Yeah.
To do that. So I mean, it's helpful to understand, even as like a non-blockchain developer, which I'm absolutely not, but I've been learning about this stuff for so long that if you can understand these conceptual ways and the way blockchain development works on these other chains, and like you actually pay attention to, let's say, Ethereum development, and well, I don't really pay attention to Bitcoin development; it's like non-existent, but mostly Ethereum development, then you can like understand like what's happening. You can run a full node. You can run a full node on Pulsechain, and then you can see the releases, and you can see kind of how this is working. And for me, it's great because I can spot bullshit like a mile away, which is very helpful in blockchain because 99% of shit is bullshit.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your insights.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just, like I said, I'm actually literally at my house waiting for a dude to come to put together I got one of these really big tool chests, like with the multiple drawers that it holds like all your stuff to organize it. And I'm literally like bored right now because Pulsechain hasn't launched, that I'm like finding things to like rearrange my house, and like, oh, I could use tool chest. Oh, well, let me do that. Let me go for a bike ride. I mean, shit, I'm so bored right now.
Yeah. Well, since I'm working, I don't have time to be bored.
Yeah, I mean, I'm technically working, but not really. I told my wife this afternoon I have to go up to my office and I have to go see if my Ethereum 2 validator on testnet is like crashed again, because it usually crashes on me after if I don't get it for a couple days. So yeah, I can look forward to that. Reboot my server, update everything, restart it, and then like, yeah, this sucks. Never a problem with Pulsechain. I have 2 full nodes going. I've had like one hiccup where I just rebooted and everything was fine, like in the last 4 months. But I can't get my Ethereum 2 node to like stay up and running more than like a day. It's total beta software.
You need to have something to do during the wait.
Yeah, I trying to stay active. Jiu-jitsu, trying to do more of that, trying to read more. A lot of cat videos. You know, because that's my joke. That's what I tell people. Because I don't like saying like semi-retired. It's kind of like I don't like doing that. That's effectively what I am right now. But I like to say I watch cat videos for a living. They're like, so how does that work? Like I can't go into details. It's top secret.
You can also say, I'm in self-improvement.
Well, I'm definitely doing that. My jiu-jitsu school, they've actually when I first started, this was like 4 months ago, I started jiu-jitsu, but they shut down their academy, like physical location, to move to a different location, and they were still doing remodeling. So I've been doing jiu-jitsu in like people's like garages for like 4 months now, which is totally weird. And then I'm like paying a fee for membership, and I'm like learning jiu-jitsu, so it's not like, but it's like it's kind of weird, like not actually having a school, and they just opened their school on Saturday. So I went to their first class, and it was like, this is like an actual school. This is weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I totally suck at jujitsu. I'm like just a white belt, and I just started. But like, it's just funny that like I started right when they're doing this move, and they lost
Well,
like 80% of their members.
when I also did karate, and it was also in a school. The sensei had some sort of agreement with the school, and after the classes finished, we would start our lesson basically in
Oh
the
god,
gymnasium.
I just got a technical support DM. I wonder if that might be a scam. I wonder.
Nah, never.
Yes, it's never PulseX.com technical support. Oh, totally not a scam. Yeah, block. Fucking scammers. God damn it. Scam somebody else,
Why are you, man?
unfortunately. What's up? Somebody got a question?
No, the guy was trying to hire you to the support technical, to the team.
We can't. Well, I mean, if they want technical support, I'm the right guy to give it, even though Pulsechain doesn't exist right now, so it's not really much, no technical support really to give. So I'm like, scammers, whatever. All right, and then the other scam that I get a lot is I paid off my student loans last year in full, and now I get nonstop companies trying to help me pay off my student loans, and it's like nonstop. Like I just got one now. I was like, God damn, leave me alone. Like I don't have student loans anymore. Go bother somebody else.
Yeah, they know that you paid your student loans, which means you have money to spend.
Yeah, but they're like, I literally like don't have any more loans. So you're like, yeah. So like I popped up on a list with somebody who actually paid their loan, and so I'm on a list with people who are like, paid $100, and like, okay, block. It was actually one of the best things about because last year everybody was super hyped, awesome, yay, Hex is at 50 cents, yay. They're like, hell yeah, pay off my debt, pay off my cars, pay off my student loans. And then like, okay, now we'll deal with like just living.
That's the hardest part.
I mean, I kind of wish, like, I think everyone at this point does. I kind of wish I had just liquidated all my Hex that I had liquid at 50 cents and held USDC for the last year. But, I didn't. And so, whatever, it'll be fine. Has to go back up. It's going to take a couple years or a year or whatever, however long it takes. But what's nice about staking is even though I sold Hex to pay off some stuff last year when we were doing really well, I still have more Hex now than I've ever had my whole life. And every day I wake up with more Hex than I've ever had, which that's nice. So, hey, if you're not staked the Hex, then you should probably think about doing that, guys and gals out there on the internet. You should stake your Hex. Just saying.
Gotta get some of those t-shirts.
I hope PulseX does well. I'm gonna be converting some of those gains into Hex for sure.
I
Try and get
plan on
back
doing.
those.
Yeah, I plan on doing the same.
I mean, my personal goal is to get back the T-shares that I actually unstaked, but I never restaked. So that's like my personal goal is just to get back to like those T-shares that I unstaked it, then I sold the Hex. Some of it like way early, and I kind of like wish I didn't do that, but I'm still doing great. But the point is, some of that money, hopefully, in a few years from now, Pulse and PulseX does really well. It's launched, everyone's happy. And buy back some of those T-shares. But the only bad thing is I have to buy them back on 2 chains now. Because Hex is just on 2 chains.
Yep. People will have to choose after the fork.
Yeah, I'm still bullish on Ethereum Hex. I've not discounted it. Some people are like, "Oh, my Ethereum Hex is gonna go, gonna die." I'm like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, we discussed that a little bit before you came, because
Oh,
someone was
today you
asking.
did?
Yeah, someone was asking. Well, we have X 2.0, quote unquote. What will happen? What will happen to normal X on Ethereum?
Well, if you make it cheap enough, it'll be in my pocket. I'm okay with that. So it probably won't be that cheap.
Yeah, it will be a balance between the fees, the value of the token, and the APY it will give when you stake it. So.
Yeah, I mean, probably what I'll do is I'll probably just buy whatever hex is cheaper on whichever right whichever chain will give me the most T shares for my US dollar value at that particular time. That's probably what I'll do. And then, but it'll be, I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it will depend a lot on what everyone else does. So you can have less T shares but more APY, which at the end of the day, what matters is the yield you get, right? Not only the T shares.
Yeah, there's some variables to go into that. But I do understand the power of the T shares, so I am definitely prioritizing maximizing the number of T shares over time that I get. Bare minimum on both chains, buying back the T shares that I've unstaked and not restaked is a personal goal of mine. It's going to take a few years to do. Perhaps I'm never going to be able to do it because Hex is so awesome and so expensive that I just don't have enough money in the universe to do it, which is like kind of a good problem to have. I'm okay with that too. I'm an optimist, even though yesterday I was kind of like sad. I'm so sad. We haven't launched yet. Feeling kind of sorry for myself. I should go to jiu-jitsu and me be put in weird positions and be made to feel like inadequate because like I'm just being put into a pretzel position like over and over again by somebody who's like 40 pounds lighter than me. You know what I mean? Perspective. I went to class on Saturday when my school opened up. And I'm there and I'm in guard. I'm in somebody's guard, which is basically they're on the ground and I'm like on my knees and their legs around me. And like they just literally like put me in like a choke and I was like, God. And then I'm trying to like move their legs out of the way so I can get on top of them, called passing the guard. And this dude is like so easily just like moving me around. I was like, God, I suck so bad. God, I gotta go to more classes. Trying not to suck so much.
Why jiu-jitsu in the first place and not any other?
I thought some of the other ones were kind of gay. I didn't really like, well, you know, yeah, where like you, I don't know, karate and like taekwondo. Those were for like little kids. The real answer, I'm kind of making fun, but the real answer is I did combatives in the army, and that's jujitsu. But it's like combatives, they have like more of a combatives program that's focused more towards on the military. And so I did that when I was in the army. So I was like, I knew about that, and I go, oh, that's pretty effective. So I started watching videos, and then my son, I wanted to get him into martial art, but I wanted him to get into one that was actually like something that wasn't like karate or taekwondo, which I've been driving past those academies for years and never had any intention of ever walking into one. And so I put him into a jiu-jitsu academy, and he didn't like it when he started getting choked. So he had first class where he got choked. He didn't like it at all. So he lasted like 3 months. He's like 8. So like we'll see if he goes. But then I was looking at it and going, you know what? This is combatives. I did this in the army. You know what I mean? Then I was like, well, I don't want to go to this school. This is just a bunch of kids. So I went online and I found another academy here that's mostly the demographic is like 30s and 40 professionals, and it's mostly self-defense. It's not competitive. It's not a competition school. And so I'm taking private lessons and I'm like learning a lot, but I still suck a lot. So I don't know. And I like the people. It's like close to my house. You know what I mean? A lot of factors go into making the decision, right?
Yeah, of course. Well, I need to jump out. See you all later. Thank you for your help.
Later. No problem. Anytime. Just tag me. If anybody needs me, just tag me. If I'm not paying attention, I'll get on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Profex in the house.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. We were earlier. I got pulled into the chat to discuss some of the development that they're doing and kind of how that affects transactions. So I don't know. Overview. Kind of overviewed it. I don't know. I mean, you can't really go into specifics. We don't really know shit. We generally kind of know what's happening.
Yeah,
Plus, I get in trouble.
there's a lot missing. What we just don't know, unfortunately. Especially with the timing, right, of what's going on exactly behind the scenes and how far are they or how close are they to being ready. Yeah, we just don't know.
Yeah. So like yesterday, I was saying I was feeling a little sad, and 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 it was like I go on an Ethereum call, and then so Ethereum has like all these developers, and they do these open calls, and they talk about they talk about stuff that's like doesn't matter, but then every once in a while they talk about something that matters. But I would love it when Pulsechain gets to the point where we actually have like some calls about the technicals, which we're not there yet, and I understand, but it'd be great to get, I was like, literally bore me. Like, go as technical as you absolutely want. I will record it, and then I'll look up the big words, and I'll understand what's going on. But as of right now, we're just like waiting.
Was it like their monthly Ethereum Foundation meeting or whatever?
No, they have several like a week now. They have at least once a week. They have a bunch. They have like the Ethereum cap herders, which is kind of where a lot of the teams are the independent teams that do ETH2 development. And then they have like calls that are on the consensus network, the full nodes, right? The execution environment, which is basically full nodes. And like they have these few different calls where you can get on YouTube and you can just watch them. Like you're not on the call with them because I don't have anything to say to them, but you can like just go to their YouTube and they just have a call and they just have a Zoom meeting with all the developers and they're just chatting about stuff that's happening and going, well, these are priorities and this is what we're working on and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes they'll say some issues that they're addressing, but they're mostly just talking about priorities and they're talking about like, some of like the steps, right? They have a kind of the development roadmap or they have not a roadmap really, but you know what I mean? It's like a checklist. Like we can go to this next thing after we get these things done. And here's where we are in the development of, say, like right now it's a merge, right? So they're talking about, well, we're doing test nets and this is what's happening. And oh, we found this problem in this client over here, blah, 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 blah. I mean, those are kind of nice just to listen to and go, yeah, okay, yeah, it's happening. I understand. They have the link to their like bullet point thing that's like kind of a project management worksheet kind of a situation. And they just have check marks on like, well, we're done with this and we're done with this and we're done with this. Hey, we're working on this. We're not quite there yet because we're kind of, we haven't even launched yet. Don't really have a big community pool of like developers that are working on the client because literally Richard and his devs are doing all the work right now.
Yeah, I saw TBC Dev wasn't too happy about the last Ethereum fork that they did. Because I guess the last update they did was a hard fork, and they only really announced it like 10 days ahead of time, like not even. But yet it was a hard fork, so it screwed up all the nodes. So I don't know what the state of the Ethereum network is in right now. Because 10 days is not exactly enough notice to give everyone to make sure that they, update or are paying attention, right? Usually fork it's like 3-4 months, half a year, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I was actually going over this. This is one of the things that when Elmire and I were talking with whoever, Robert or whatever, I was talking about like what normally happens, like with these hard forks. They set a block height sometime in the future. Hopefully, it's more than like 2 weeks, and then they have a release that has all the changes that's set to go active at that block height that's down the way, and it gives everybody time to like update so that it's a smooth hard fork, right? I mean, whether it's a soft fork or hard fork or whatever, it's like all the nodes have time to like update to the new version, and then everybody's running the new version, and then when that block height happens, like here's ETH 2.0 had a problem a month or two ago on mainnet because literally they pushed a release. Not all of the clients had the code for the changes integrated into their client and pushed to all their clients, right? They were lagging, and a major client didn't have the specific code to effectively be in consensus with the rest of the network on ETH 2.0, the beacon chain. So because they were lagging in their development, they lagged their pushing of the change. So when the block height of that change became active for the whole network, there was one major client that wasn't active, and it like shut down the network for like, I don't know, 4 hours or something while they scrambled trying to figure out what the hell was going on. And then they fixed it, but the beacon chain was down for, I don't know, what was it, 4-6 hours or something last month or a month and a half ago. It was like a big situation. I mean, but they're doing this thing where we're only using one geth, but like TBD, right? Like we're forking Ethereum, so we have to integrate their code changes into our version. So I could imagine that's kind of pain in the ass because we still have to stay in lockstep with them so that we can have a clean fork whenever the fuck that happens.
Yeah, and I'm sure that yeah, I mean it's minor. It's probably not a big deal, but you just have to keep up to date with everything, right? So
no, but it still requires man hours to do, right? And they have other priorities. And now they're like, fuck, Ethereum did what? Crap, now I have to drop what I'm doing over here. I can deal with this bullshit over here. And then like, okay, now we're good to go. Then I have to go back over here and work on what is actually priority of like the Pulsechain priority. Yeah. I mean, it's software, right?
yeah, you gotta love the software, especially when you're relying on other people or have to deal with what they do on their own, right? And if you're integrating their software to yours, somehow, then you got to make it all work. So, right? Or if you're, copying theirs and forking it, you still have to make it work up until the point where you can go your own way.
Yeah, I mean, and then even after we go our own way, they'll have the option to like port future changes over to Pulsechain if they want to, but it won't be like a requirement because we'll be our own network. Be easier. Well, I would imagine it's easier, but even though Ethereum's on 2.0 at that point, so even then I don't even know actually, because Ethereum will have the execution environment, which is technically the 4 nodes, and then you have the consensus, which is like the beacon chain. Yeah, I mean, Ethereum 2.0 is kind of weird, but I kind of want to stay on top of it too to understand what they're doing. So this afternoon, after I get this thing at my house done, I have to go up and like see if my ETH 2.0 validator is crashing me again, which they always do. I was hoping that after I move I was actually using Infura for my execution environment, which is the full node, to link from the full node to the beacon chain, which is the consensus environment, and then the validator sits on top of that. So I was actually using Infura for the execution environment, and which is like not recommended because it's like they have bandwidth usage and like it's like a big problem. So I actually run my own full node on my own machine localhost. So I'm running the execution environment, and I'm running running with the full database, and then I'm running the beacon chain. So that's the separate. So I'm effectively running two databases, right? On two consistent execution environment, consistent network, like on one machine, and then the validators are sitting on top of it. And I was hoping that would like clean everything up, and apparently it didn't really. It's still running shitty because ETH 2.0 kind of runs shitty right now.
Yeah, I remember you saying that you're hoping that once it was just gonna go grab the info from your own node instead of getting it online from Inferior there, that it would fix the problem, but sounds like it didn't. So it's just
no,
sucks. Yeah.
It's like I'm running like 80% effectiveness, which well, I mean, so we can talk about it 2.0. It's fine, right? Nothing else to talk about. So as a validator in ETH 2.0, you create blocks, but then you also attest, which is validating blocks that other people have created in your community, right? Because you get put into individual communities per epoch, and then which is set amount of time. I forget how long the epochs are or whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? So like in Pulsechain, it's 24 hours. I'm not really sure how long the epochs are in ETH 2.0. I forgot, but so effectively, you're put into a committee. So you have a group of validators that are somebody's creating a block, and then you have all the other ones are attesting that like it's a good block, like on the beacon chain, like no big deal, right? Well, for whatever reason, I'm missing 20% of those verifications, and I haven't been able to figure out why. And so far, I'm like running. At this point, I'm probably gonna run in a data center and find out if it's like the fact that I'm running a server in my office and maybe it's an internet problem where I'm not getting the blocks fast enough to validate them, to attest them fast enough, which could be a problem. Because this would also be a problem with, say, a pulse chain. Oh, this is how it ties back to pulse chain. So if you were running a validator in your house and your internet connection wasn't that great, if you weren't able to get the prior block before it was your turn to create the newer block, then you'd miss that. That would be a slashing event, right? And so that could be a cause for concern of like kind of why you don't want to run a validator in your house, because you need to have a really good internet and you need to have your computer running. So I think maybe that's my next step to find out like what's happening is actually to get everything up running in like a data center, like a full up like DigitalOcean data center, migrate all my validators over to that data center as like a test to see if I'm actually going to be able to run 100%. If that's like, if it's at that point, it'd be like an internet problem because my, internet's not fast enough or whatever. And it's like the last thing I can think of because my hardware is totally good. Plenty of RAM, plenty of CPU, like no problem there. And so my last thing is like, it's the internet thing. Right, because a validator, like on Pulsechain, a validator has to get the transactions from the rest of the network, meaning all the nodes it's peered to. They have to get that data, that bandwidth has to come into their node, and then it has to have enough CPU and RAM to hold the data, process it, put the block together, and then broadcast it out to all of their peers. So there's definitely like a minimum amount of like RAM and CPU that you need on a validator. On testnet, like it's pretty low because there's no transactions. But if you like on mainnet, say we have 600 transactions a block, that's a lot of transactions in the mempool. That's a lot of processing power to like validate blocks, package blocks, transfer blocks from your node to another node. A lot of bandwidth, like it's kind of an enterprise grade kind of thing. Which it's funny when people come in and they want to run a validator, like, hey, can I run a validator on my laptop? I'm like, well, technically you can, but it's going to be really shitty.
Does it take a lot of resources on your computer?
Mostly, it's technically mostly RAM, but it depends on the load. So, I mean, you have a machine like on testnet. I mean, like 32 gig machine, like 8 cores or whatever, I guess works fine. I mean, like I'm only running a full node, but I think I could probably turn those into a validator and they'd run fine on mainnet. It's like 16 gigs of RAM and like 4 CPU, but there's no load on testnet. Those would absolutely not work on mainnet with any type of load at all. It would just not work. So depending on the load, you can need 64 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of RAM, right? Because you have like the client needs, like you have the load from the actual client for it to process, and then you have mempool from the other nodes giving you transactions that you need to pull together for block. And like there's all these subcomponents, these processes that take RAM. And so, and Geth can use up to like half of the RAM on the machine for what it is. It's maxes out at that amount. So if you have 32 gigs of RAM, it maxes out at like 16 gigs of RAM. And that RAM is used for like the mempool and for it to do all that stuff for the client, the actual like Geth client. And then the rest are system resources for the machine itself. So you gotta have a decent amount of RAM. It's not so much CPU intensive as RAM intensive. I mean, unless you're an RPC, then if you're an RPC, then it's very CPU intensive because you're doing connections to outside connections to other users, and that's very CPU intensive and not so much RAM intensive. So it depends on the purpose. But I only know that because I ran an RPC for the last 6 months, and I did a lot of testing to figure out that information. And it's not needed for if you're like a regular full node. If you're just storing the database and you're sharing that data with other clients on other peers on the network, or you're a validator, then you'd have to optimize for RAM usage, not CPU usage. I did find from my testing, I could get a Pulsechain full node to sync with 8 gigs of RAM and like 4 cores or 4 CPU or whatever, which was like the bare minimum. Otherwise, it would like fail because there's not enough RAM. But you literally can't do anything. It's like it'll sync, but as soon as you put like any type of load on it, it'll crash. So effectively, the minimum amount to do really like anything is like 16 gigs of RAM. So it can use that 8 gigs of RAM for Geth, and then it has an additional 8 gigs of RAM for the hardware to use, so the whole machine doesn't crash on you. So it's kind of funny because the minimum specs I think say 8 gigs, which is literally the bare minimum you can possibly use and still function, meaning just sync the database and then like share blocks. But you literally don't have enough resources to do anything else. And it takes forever. Took me like almost a day to sync up the whole chain with 8 gigs of RAM. Like 23 hours. It was not fast at all.
I will get a headache thinking about all that.
Well, I don't think about it too much. I've learned what I need to learn. And I don't really think about it. I just retrieve the information that's, once I need it. It makes me sound smart if nothing else. So I always got that going on for me. But it is helpful when people have questions, because most times when people have questions, they actually don't know how to form. They don't know how to form the question with maybe the correct verbiage or in the right way, and then so if you know enough, then you can kind of like understand what sometimes what people are talking about, even if they don't use the correct terms and they're kind of like in a roundabout way, and you're like, okay, I've been in that situation before. You're like, okay, I think I know what you're talking about. let me ask let me answer the question in this way. You tell me if it answers your question. And then luckily more times than not that actually answer their question. And like because they weren't technically inclined enough to actually understand like these are the words you have to use to communicate this concept. So sometimes you got to like in blockchain specifically, you have lots of different varying levels of like technical knowledge, which is fine. And I found it easy to, if the more I know, the easier it is for me to like, I try not to blow people's minds. You try and explain things in the simplest way that you think they can handle. Um, and it's helpful because blockchain is actually kind of hard.
I can't wait for the copy over.
Yeah, it'll be really great. I'm still waiting for it. Like we're all waiting for it. Um, I try and stay busy. I try not to think about it too much.
The thing that's on my mind lately is trying to find good ways to interact with other chains because in the United States of America, some chains you have to go through a lot of loopholes.
Yeah, mine's simple. I usually just use Ethereum, so I don't really have that problem. Although I know how to interact with all the other chains if I ever needed to do so, but I find myself not needing to do so.
Yeah, I'm only on Ethereum and Pulsechain. I do have Binance on there. It's tricky sending tokens.
Yes, I mostly would just like to rather be a bridge at some point after we launch to Binance, so we can get those people over to Pulse Chain. You know what I mean? And make it easy for them. Perhaps some one or something will appear that will do that.
Hey, so do you know what the first exchange was that accepted Hex?
Uniswap. No, I mean like centralized exchange. No, I mean they're all like minor ones. So all the ones that are using Hex, that are listed on Hex, I don't use any of them. There are a couple though. If you want the coin market cap and you look at markets, I'm sure they would pop up there.
So how is Richard Hart? This is like a rhetorical question, but that I'm thinking of. It's like, how is Richard Hart going to have this snowball effect with Pulsechain? You know, I'm reading kind of like dates of how Hex had a little snowball effect. You know, the Staker app helped it propel it. Uh, what else? Oh, the announcement of Pulsechain launching helped get another snowball effect in there.
Yeah. Well, having the biggest airdrop with all the copies is going to help with that. Yeah, I'm not even thinking about Snowball. I'm not thinking about 10,000x. I literally just like launch. You know what I mean? I don't have any RAM in my head to deal with anything else. And even that, I'm trying not to think about it too much. Because Pulsechain literally can't be a choice unless it's live, right? It can't. It's not even an option unless it's live. So work on that, I guess.
Yeah, I know when I like explain it to my friends and stuff, and then I tell them, "Oh yeah, it hasn't launched yet, but you know, this is what you need to do, all this." And there's just a puzzle on their face of like not understanding that we're early, all that shit.
Yeah, when you think about like sacrificers, right? You locked in a US dollar value that went down like 90% probably in the last year. So you're good there. So like no matter what, if you're a sacrificer, you're doing great. I mean, the only problem is Pulsechain hasn't launched yet. Like, we'll get there. It'll be fine. Like I have my sad days too. Yesterday was a sad day for me. Feeling a little sorry for myself. You know what I mean? Like Pulsechain hasn't launched yet. I'm kind of sad, but it'll be fine. You know what I mean? Like hopefully Richard gives us an update sometime in the near future.
I feel like Pulsechain has a lot of buy pressure already. Like it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean we just don't know. I mean, there's going to be some sell pressure from people who waited however long we have to wait. And then there's however many people want to buy. I don't know that. I don't know what those two groups, what size of those are. We won't know until we launch. So we just got to launch and then just deal with it. You know what I mean?
Dude, if I get Pulse at 1 cent or lower, I'm all in right there. I'm as much as dry powder as I get. If I get that at 1 cent or lower, I'm all in.
I mean, I have a guy. He's going to have to buy in on Pulse because, of course, I wasn't talking to him about. I didn't even know him when even the PulseX Sacrifice was going on. So, and I think he's going to get a decent price when we launch. I think he's going to be fine. And I'm having him get his money ready, have it on a wallet that he owns, like a treasure. I'm him to buy a treasure. I got to get him set up on it, and then he's got to move his money there, and then wait for Pulsechain to launch, and then He's gonna buy Pulse and PulseX. I'm gonna recommend that he does like a 50-50 maybe, and then just sits on it for like 3 years. He says he's fine with that. I'm like, great, I'll help you as long as you understand you need to sit on this shit for 3 years, and like just don't worry about what the price is.
For sure. We won't see those numbers that we all want for years to come, you know.
Well, here's my thing is like I don't know what the multiple will be. People throw out numbers. I have some that I think are reasonable on the very low end, and then up from there. I'm like, whatever. I'm not going to share them in the chat. It doesn't really matter. You can come up with your own numbers. And so there's a number that over the next 3 years, I think is the bare minimum number that I think is possible or probable. And then there's possible like more than that. I'm like, okay, great. But even my lowball number is enough that like anybody was happy with. I think anybody who gets in at launch a Pulse chain and holds for 3 or 4 years, or got sacrificed and waits 3 or 4 years, are going to be fine, be happy with the multiple that we get, whatever the number is. You don't have to say what the number is, like enough that you're going to be happy.
I'm just glad that I caught this project before launch, dude. So many projects launched. I caught wind of it too late, you know, didn't know exactly what to do. You know, there's 1,000 things for me to do. Fuck, what do I do? But I'm glad I'm here early, you know, taking my time, learning what I need to do, be secure, like all that is great.
I mean, I guess usually what happens is where you launch and then it's like a year of like sideways, like not a lot going on. Hopefully it goes up and to the right like slightly, right? But it's mostly if you look at the longer time frame, it basically looks like it's flat, right? With a slight up to the right. And then after a while, then I don't know, it starts getting more adoption, it starts like pumping, you know what I mean? Like what's that look like? What's that trajectory? How long does Pulse Chain take from launch to start really gaining momentum? I have no idea. I don't know. It could be 6 months. It could be a year. I have no idea. All I do know is if you get in now and you just like wait for it, as long as things go as expected, then you're fine, right? Um, so it's like hold and just hold, and then let everyone else get flooded out, and you hold, and then you're fine.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do anything too fast. You know, I'm gonna probably just do one strategy for the most part, and that's hodling DCA in every day or every week and just hold. It's the best bet. Sit on my hands, you know.
Yeah, I mean, PulseX single asset staking, that's a great way to hold PulseX and then get some third party tokens that you can do whatever with. Like I'm gonna probably buy more PulseX with it. Like that's what I plan on doing anyway. Like I have absolutely no idea how many pools are gonna be, what those third party tokens are gonna be, or anything. But it's effectively free money. So I'll use that free money and I'll buy PulseX probably with it. And then use that PulseX to put back into single asset staking, and then I'll make more, even more. And I'm like, and I'll just do that. You know what I mean? And that seems like a good way to like collect more, have a DCA strategy where you're using other people's money, right? Free money you get, and just hold for the long term until we top out again in the next cycle, which is what 3 or 4 years from now.
you're a brave guy messing with the liquidity pools and all that, man. I'm not too
That's not
smart.
you misunderstand them. That's not liquidity. PulseX single asset staking. You put PulseX the token into a pool. It's not a liquidity pool. It's just a pool of PulseX that you still own. And in exchange for holding that PulseX in that pool, a third party token like Project has some token they're trying to market to the community, and they give you some amount of those tokens for being in the pool. That's PulseX single asset staking. What you're talking about is providing liquidity into PulseX, which is you absolutely can do that, and then you can take your liquidity pool tokens, right, for adding liquidity, and you put it into the farm, and you can get the ink token. That's like inflationary token that's provided to incentivize adding liquidity to PulseX, the exchange. The two separate things. I don't really mess with liquidity providing too much.
Well, when banks start looking for blockchains to use, they better choose Pulsechain. That's all I gotta say. So Richard Hart tweeted out that he's going to be streaming for the next what 555 days.
No, that's Richard. That's Hexo. That's a hexologist. 555 days, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then he says at the end he's going to delete all the social media. I'm like, well, I hope that's not not real. But a lot of people they say that, like, I'm going to delete my social media if I don't do this thing, and it's all totally a lie. Usually, it's like a joke. But that's hexologist tweet that he retweeted. I was watching Hexologist every day during the AA. That was pretty nice, like a daily thing. So now it starts back up, which is great. Something to watch every day.
Blockchain and beer, baby.
Oh, really? I didn't see because I didn't have the news on. Look at that girl's legs, how skinny she was. She had bigger legs. How the hell was skinny? How come? What happened to my fucking legs?
You got a hot micing, bud. DC, hot micing.
Her legs got a fatness.
No, she's got shaped her leg, but she's tall. But you know.
Okay, no, they look fat there.
You know,
But big legs can be fat. Big legs can be shaped.
DC, hot mic, hot mic.
Don't.
DC, DC, you got your mic open.
It could be any place on your body.
I guess maybe it's just your ankles, you know, where you can swell.
Well, it can be any place in your body. Depends on the person. I don't know. You know, but check it.
All right, let me tag somebody in the admin chat to mute this. He doesn't dox himself or something.
Right. This Telegram, every time I get in my car and the Bluetooth pops open, it automatically turns on my mic. So I'm like cautious on that. And sometimes when I log in here, it automatically turns on. Yeah, like, you have to be cautious on that.
Trump supporter. His father is a Trump supporter. And the area that he got as a progressive.
All right, I posted in the admin chat.
Let's see how they take
in his group.
Start some
So
stuff up, you know?
we'll get him muted.
Let's see.
Hopefully he doesn't give us a social security number, his address, his mother's maiden name, his blood type or anything like that.
Okay.
So probably Democratic area.
Gotcha. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
He had a
So when Hex launched, it took like 6 months, about 5 months to get rid of a zero.